years ago, now that we have our phones and we're recording instances, it's always trauma on your timeline. There's always like someone Black who's getting stomped out or being beaten by police, or just being treated unfairly by other white people, like things like that. It's really emotional to watch, and sometimes you don't know that it's taken a toll on you, but it really does take a toll on you. And it's like, how do you keep yourself mentally healthy through those times of watching like racial injustice?
Oh no! I don't get it. It's okay. We get
it. I was like, yes, Lord, come on with the cancellations.
Ooh, we going in it. Now just kidding.
I don't know if you know this, but I'm Black. Am I good?
He's with the best of them, and he's one of my favorite men of the episode.
that entrance sounds like much more than who I actually am.
My guest of honor might be small in stature, but her impact is enormous. She's an advocate for the culture. She lives by the quote, Black mental health matters, our lives matter. Mental health is her passion, and she specifically wanted to become a therapist to work with people of color and continue working on the stigma of mental health in the Black community. She received her Bachelor's of Science degree from Kansas State University in 2013 and her Master's of Arts degree from Argosy University in 2017. She became a fully licensed professional counselor in 2019 after passing the state licensing exam and completing 3,000 hours of supervision. That's a lot of hours.
It's a lot of hours.
That's a lot of hours.
Yes. Yes, so many.
She previously worked for the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services. She also served as a family-based safety worker for a couple of years. Then she was promoted to Tarrant County Group Treatment Coordinator. She currently works full-time for the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services, and she owns a private practice called Time to Excel Counseling, LLC. Today, my guest of honor is Bree Ajayi. How you doing, sis?
Woo woo! I'm doing good. That makes me sound like I'm like amazing. I love that.
Y'all are. See, everybody says that, and I'm like, y'all are amazing.
I was like, you talking about me? Oh my God.
Like, did I do all of that?
I know, right?
I always say, you know, we don't need luck because we have favor. So, like, when you have favor, you do a lot of things and make it look easy. We make it look easy.
Yes, favor has definitely got me through.
How has quarantine been going for you?
Girl, I mean, I think right now, I think at the beginning of it, it was a little bit more difficult, but I think now, I think it's just like a way of life. Like, everything's normal. I'm seeing pretty much all of my clients virtually. I'm doing my job from the state at home, and so everything seems pretty normal. I think the only thing is, I think, like, trying to separate being at home all the time and like not leaving. So then it's like hard to separate home and work. And I feel like when I'm at home, I've worked a lot more than I have like going into an office. So I think that's probably the harder thing. And then, you know, usually I have a lot of plans on the weekend to be my big relief for like self-care, and really every weekend it's like I'm not doing nothing. I'm probably going to be up in this house doing the same thing I always do. And there's only so many things you can make fun in the house at some point, you know.
That's
no vacations and things like that. So, but other than that, I'm healthy. I'm blessed. I mean, I still have a job, and so I really cannot be complaining. My family is healthy, so not a lot to complain about. Those are little problems compared to what other people have going on.
It's true, but it doesn't mean that you got to discount it though. So it's definitely an adjustment to get used to this new normal, whatever you want to call it. So
yes, it is. But yeah, I mean, going on to almost November now, it's like it's normal. You know, you just get used to it. I think in the first 3 months when they're like, you know, by the summertime, everything will get back to normal. Now I'm just like, you know, it's gonna be 2022 or something like that, and I just have to keep, you know, adjusting to it.
They lied to us. They said it was gonna be over in the summer.
Girl, okay. It's gonna get hot and it's just gonna burn. The virus is just gonna burn right up.
I said that too. I was like, you know, the virus might not last in the heat because it's Texas.
Yeah, and I mean, I was just like, really, I don't know if it's ever gonna be normal again. Like, I think everything's gonna always be a little bit different now.
Of course.
It's like something I'm gonna tell my kids about
Yeah, we're gonna make it through
COVID-19 hit. Yes, yes. I think we've gotten through the hard part already, hopefully. Hope
Yeah,
there's nothing that could be worse.
let's hope not. We almost out of the year, so we almost out.
Girl, 2020.
One for the books. But
Yes, definitely.
as you said, you're still working. So I know that
Mhm.
being a therapist, you're in super high demand at this time.
Mhm.
How has it been trying to help your clients and trying to make sure that everybody is good at the same time?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I've noticed like since I've started my private practice, like I really have to put up boundaries because really a lot of times like clients will ask for really late appointments or they want to be seen 2 and 3 times a week, and I'll end up like, hurting myself trying to hurt them. And really at times I have to tell them I can't see you at all. Like recently I was telling Ben like I'm going to have to start a waiting list. Like I don't know if I can accept any new clients because I'm trying to stay at about probably like 15 to 20 appointments at most, just because I'm working another job too. But that's like 20 hours or 15 hours of talk and listen to trauma and talking people through stuff. And so people think like with therapy you're like you're just talking to people, and it's like no, there's so much that
Mm-mm.
goes on and it takes a toll on you. Every session someone's talking about something like painful. Sometimes it's
Mm-hmm.
a little bit more cheerful, but a lot of times like people are like reaching out because they're in crisis.
Right.
Otherwise no one would have any therapy. So I mean, I think I'm doing the best I can. I've been learning as I've been going along with it, but I definitely have learned like there's just gonna be some things I can't help with, and I'm not like God. So it's like, the hour with me is all great and everything, but if you're not doing the work outside of therapy, I can't help you, and I don't know how another 2 hours with me will change anything in your life. And so I have to like think about me, and like how can I help other people if I'm not doing well because I'm trying to take all these sessions and help you? It won't be good
Yeah.
for either one of us. So, I mean, it's super busy and sometimes it's hard to get back to people. And I know people have a hard time getting a therapist because they're like, we're calling, we're emailing. And it's like, I don't have an assistant yet because I got trust issues, but I'm working through them. But,
Yeah.
but it's hard sometimes. Like, sometimes I have to pick one day of the week when I'm going to go through phone calls and emails and things like that. And so hopefully, people understand that part of it and they don't get deterred and say, well, no one's calling me back. I don't think I want a counselor, but it is like a difficult time. And anytime between November, December, anytime by the holidays, usually people are always seeking counseling. Those have been the busiest months for me as a counselor since I've started. So, and when the weather is like gloomy and dark, girl, depression is not.
Wow.
Yeah, weather changes and people usually have a lot more depression.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting how we all want to say that 2020 is bad, but I really feel
Mhm.
like 2020 is definitely like revealing a lot of things.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah, it's revealing a lot, and it's like the things we try to like hide or try to just suppress, it's coming to the
Mhm.
surface now. And I think therapy, I love the fact that therapy is beginning to be something that's accepted, especially in
Yeah.
our culture. But can you tell me a little bit about the stigma of therapy and like how it's going in our culture?
But yeah, I grew up with the stigma myself. Like I've never heard anyone in my family discussing going to therapy or getting mental health treatment. However, like I noticed a lot, especially on my dad's side of the family. I didn't really know. Like I just thought I didn't know what I knew. I knew that my family and my dad's side of the family had a lot of issues. And now
Hmm.
that I'm older, I can see like probably all of them in different ways had mental health issues that were not being cared for, and that's the way they were acting because of mental health. And I do think some of the stuff is passed down genetically because I think I have like 4 uncles that have schizophrenia that I've self-diagnosed from my own.
Hmm.
um, but even like my mom's side of the family, anytime you mention you're feeling sad or you're depressed, the first thing about it is go pray about it. And I mean, I don't think that's the wrong thing either. I think like at times, especially with our history with slavery and things like that, like praying about things was the only way to actually get through things. Like we only
Hmm.
had our faith. And now that we're evolving as a community, praying is always going to be something that I think we do as a community. However, we have to think like we could also need help. And like when you say I need help and I need to go see a therapist, or I'm taking my depression medicine, it doesn't mean you're crazy. And I think like we are always so like cautious about being labeled. You know, we already get labeled, especially like if I'm a woman and I'm being assertive, I'm labeled angry, you know. And so if I have mental health issues as a Black woman, it might seem like I'm crazy. And so a lot of the stigma is just like based on our history. And then it also comes from us just being judgmental sometimes of us and not understanding like mental health is like a real thing, because sometimes, you know, you'll see it on social media. Someone says they had some mental health issues and it's made fun of, or they're saying that they're lying to get attention. But, you know, suicide rates, you know, Black men commit suicide at a higher rate than, you know, Black women. They actually follow through with that. And like, that's something to really take in consideration. Like, just think that someone has to be in so much pain to think about like really ending their life. Like, what mind state do they have to be in? So, I mean, I think it has a lot to do with how you're raised, your family, and then really just taking in consideration of like, you know what, I'm not going to worry about what other people think about me. Or depending on if you have a lot of friends in counseling, it might make you feel more comfortable, which now it seems like, you know, a lot of us all have our own therapists, which is good. So it makes people feel more comfortable. Hopefully it's like a trend, a new like fashion trend to have your own therapist.
Hey, we need that to be solidified. Everybody needs
Right. Yes.
in
I
real
have some
life.
high school teenagers I see, and like that's how it started with them to do therapy, is that like they thought it was cool. They're like, everyone has their own therapist, you know, they got therapy packs. Like it's like cool for them to all have a therapist.
I
So
love that.
I'll take it.
That's
Yes, because they
dope.
need it. Yeah, they definitely need it.
So would you say that seeing your family and just experiencing the way you grew up made you want to become a therapist?
Definitely, definitely. Honestly, my parents' divorce honestly was like one of the first things where I was like, I definitely want to like. I was thinking more so of the mediation side at first when I was doing my undergrad, but I always thought with my parents, I'm always like, they didn't even get us any counseling going through the divorce, nor did they do any couples counseling. That was like nothing that was ever discussed. And I remember seeing something on TV, and it was like people doing counseling, and I was like, oh my gosh, like that's amazing that like people could talk people through like staying in a relationship. And I always thought like, you know, because growing up there wasn't a lot of Black families, especially Black husband and wives that were staying together. Either they were never married or they were divorced. And so I always was like, if I could be someone that could help people like heal relationships, then that would be amazing, because no one typically is saying when you have an issue, they wait till they're about to get divorced to get like couples counseling. And
True.
so typically right now I'm always trying to get people to see of like, it's preventative work, you know, like it's just to like have these issues worked out before they get to the worst of the worst. You know, if you're seeing me at the end of the relationship when all these bad things have happened, there's only so much I can do, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So
Y'all
yeah,
done
I
ran it
mean,
through.
yeah, and I mean that was the aspect that made me want to go into the field, but then also, you know, just seeing a lot. And like I mean, when I was young, I don't think I saw like a lot of the issues. Like when I used to see homeless people and people would say like veterans are homeless, I would always be like, how does that happen to people? And now, you know, as I started learning more, especially in college, I was just like, that's mental health issues. Like, especially working for the state, it's like you could literally give everyone these resources. You could give them all the money in the world and say, I'm gonna hold your hand, I'm gonna take you to get housing, and I'm gonna make sure you got your car. And then it still might not work, and it's because of like mental health issues, like traumas. And I really realized like, even you see all these celebrities, they have everything, and it's like none of that matters if
Yeah.
they haven't worked through like their trauma and what's happened to them, and actually be able to like express themselves in a healthy way, because people express themselves all the time. Ain't healthy though.
Oh, don't we know it? Jeez.
Yes.
Especially with this
Yes.
election going on, we definitely know that
Yes,
people are expressing
definitely.
themselves.
Yes.
That's crazy. Yeah. I think that it's important for us to reflect a lot and always try to understand why things happen, or understand like how you can practically work through things. So I think
Mhm.
therapy is always a good thing, a good tool to use. Can you tell me how you feel the way the world is right now, how that's impacting us, because some people don't even know the word trauma. They didn't learn it until this year. So
Yeah.
can we talk a little
Well,
bit
I
about
mean,
the
just think about racial stuff that's happened this year with George Floyd. Even though these are not new issues to us, for some reason it's like new to a lot of people, which is still crazy to me. But just think about like the first time you saw, someone black get murdered on a video. I mean, I think that happened to me maybe like 4 years. I can't tell you which video it was, but I just remember it came on my timeline so many times, and I watched it. And I want to say I watched it probably more than 5 times. And I just remember not being able to sleep at night and just like, I don't know, just feeling like really sad about it. And so just think about like right now, I mean, years ago, now that we have our phones and we're recording instances, it's always trauma on your timeline. There's always like someone black who's getting stomped out or being beaten by police, or just being treated unfairly by other white people, like things like that. It's really emotional to watch, and sometimes you don't know that it's taken a toll on you, but it really does take a toll on you. And it's like, how do you keep yourself mentally healthy through those times of watching like racial injustice, or even watching like with COVID-19, like why is it that more black people are dying from COVID-19 than white people, or still with like infant mortality rates or maternity rates with our black women, of like, why is it that our moms and the kids of the black moms are still dying? Like those things are all trauma for us. And I don't think anyone who's outside of our culture can really get a good understanding. As much as I've explained it, I still don't think they get why we are so upset and why all these things actually hurt us and cause us trauma. And I don't even think black people even seen all these things happen as trauma until probably recently.
Yeah, for real.
And so, like, how do you actually know what you should do when you see things like that? Like, it's really a lot of you being aware of yourself. Like, okay, so do I need to watch this video in order for me to understand what's going on? Sometimes you don't need to watch those videos, like, honestly. Sometimes you do, because it's like, I need to understand what happened. With your timeline, how much should you be on social media when things like this happen, racial injustices happen? I think you always need to take a break. Like, if you're on your phone and you're watching protests and you're watching people being hurt for 4 or 5 hours a day, like, there's no way that someone's going to tell you that's going to be healthy for your mental health.
Right.
And then the mix to that, if you are an activist and you have to see what's going on all the time, the main thing is like self-care. With COVID-19, quarantining, which being in your house, especially if you live alone, like, everything that you probably haven't thought about in years that hurt you is coming up all of a sudden now, and depression is hitting you. We're still not taking care of ourselves. And what does self-care look like for us? Because we're always on survivor mode, like, how do you actually take care of yourself? It could be easy as like listening to music, but a lot of times when you get into like a depressed episode, you do the opposite of like what you need. Like, you isolate yourself, you're not talking to anyone, you're sitting in the dark. Versus like when you go through a depressive episode, you need to be around people that love you, which kind of can't do right now, but you can still talk to them. And when you're actually struggling, like, why not tell your friends that you are having a tough time? Like, why is it hard for us to actually say we need help? And I mean, we're always trying to get so independent, especially us women. Like, we're always trying to get that independence and say, I'm an independent woman, I take care of everything. And we think we're like superwoman a lot of the time, but it's like, we got to learn like when to take off the cape and be vulnerable, so we know that, like, we're not safe all the time.
Yeah.
Like, there's times for us to just like lay it all out in order for us to actually heal. And that's the thing with healing, is like, how do you heal? Typically talking about it, like letting it be real, not like stuffing it, is going to be the way that you actually heal. Black men are the biggest stuffers in the world. They stuff, they stuff, they stuff, and it comes out in all these different unhealthy, dangerous ways. And they're the main ones who are taught like not to express themselves. Like, if they see something on the news, typically, they're stuffing, they're not expressing themselves, they're not crying. Like, it's still not where black men are like being vulnerable enough to just be in tears all the time, and people not say like, you're a punk, like, why can't they cry? What's wrong with it?
A human.
Right.
You're human. You
Exactly.
have emotions.
Exactly. And you need the people around you that let you know, like, you don't have to be strong all the time. Like, that's not normal for you to be strong and put on a brave face all the time. Like, sometimes you have to because we got to get through it. But then there should be other times where you feel comfortable enough that you're going to just, like, let all that fall through and you're going to cry and you're going to talk about it and talk about how much pain you're in. Because, I mean, that's the only way it's going to be real. You avoiding stuff does not make it unreal, you know?
It only makes it worse. Avoiding it makes it so
Yes.
much worse.
Yes. And then, I mean, even with, activism and things like that, just finding what place you're in. I think some people get so overwhelmed of like, what do I need to do to help? It's like, find where you fit. Like, I feel like I'm doing a great job by I'm offering discounted services to Black people in crisis. Like, I feel like this is my niche. I don't know if I'm someone who needs to be out in the protest, out on the street using my voice. Like, I have other ways to use my voice, like starting a nonprofit, hiring Black therapists. Like, that could be like where I can help. And so people need to also think about, like, you don't have to do whatever. You don't have to post on your social media. Like, a lot of that is kind of unhelpful sometimes. Like,
Yeah, because
because
it stops at the post.
it stops at the post, but like, where are you going to put your action in? Are you going to talk to HR and talk to them about how all the Black people around here are getting paid less? Like, are you guys going to do something about that? Like, start where you need to start and not following, like, there's not a rule of like what activism looks like.
Yeah, that's for sure. Because I think a lot of people felt that way. Like, I'm gonna go out
Yeah.
here, and they made sure they took a picture so they could post it.
Yes.
I'm not gonna lie, I felt some type of way about that
Yes.
because I'm just like, yo, the last thing I'm thinking about is taking a picture if I'm out here.
Yes. Yes.
But I get it, no judgment. But I just like,
Yeah.
all right, y'all.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the other thing. People don't need to post everything. Like, if you're giving away to charity, doing the things that you feel are important to you, like, social media don't have to know, and then social media can't tell you're not doing nothing because you ain't post about it. Like, how much
Right.
sense does that make?
None.
It's insane. It's insane. But yeah, I think things like that, just being aware of yourself, how things are affecting you, talking about it, taking breaks from social media, letting yourself know, like, it's okay to be upset. And then just also being aware of, like, when do I need to actually seek help to talk about these issues? Because sometimes you don't have someone, if I was to call my grandma right now and say, Grandma, I'm having some mental health issues. I got depression. I feel like I can't get out of bed. She gonna tell me right now, you gotta drop to your knees and pray to Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And I will do that. But in addition, I need to learn some skills of like how to cope with these things when they happen.
Yeah, that was gonna definitely be my next question. I mean, you kind of laid it out already, but
Yeah.
when would you say is the point where you definitely need to be reaching out to someone? Like,
Yeah.
what?
I think anytime you start having like any suicidal thoughts, if you ever start thinking about like if things would be better without me, if I'm just in so much pain, I wish I wasn't here. Any type of suicidal thoughts, even though if you don't have like a plan, but anytime you get sad enough where you're thinking like not living would be better, that's always a good time. But really, honestly, there's not a right time. I think even when you're not in crisis, you should reach out to a counselor. I mean, I think too many people wait till they're in crisis, and that's when they're calling me and like cussing me out because I can't fit them in. Waiting too long to look for a counselor. But really, I mean, any time is a good time. But if you notice, like with your anxiety, if you feel like you're starting to have panic attacks, if you have days where, especially a lot of have everything going good in your life and you can't figure out like why you feel like that, that could be depression. And I mean, I don't want to steer people away from also seeing a psychiatrist because sometimes, we do a lot of work in counseling, but it doesn't take away some of the symptoms that their body creates. And sometimes you do have to see a psychiatrist and a therapist at the same time. Therapy can help you cope, get through the problems, but sometimes bodily symptoms you need to actually have some medication for sometimes.
Yeah. Would you say that the reason why the people in our culture don't go to get therapy is because of money, or would you say it's like lack
Mm-hmm.
of health insurance? Like,
Yeah, I also think it's like a lack of knowledge because there's so many programs out there that will actually help you with counseling. And I mean, as a counselor, we're all supposed to do, I want to say it's like either 15 or 20% of our work is supposed to be pro bono. So
Mm-hmm.
that means free counseling services, or sometimes we offer a sliding scale. But if you just like look for free therapy for Black people, there's usually a lot of websites. Like Taraji has her nonprofit. She's doing free therapy for Black men. She's paying us as therapists to see Black men.
Yeah.
And then also like universities, like I don't think UTA, but like TCU, while people are in school, they'll charge you like $5 to see a counselor because the students need the experience. So typically, if you don't have insurance, which a lot of people don't, there's usually a bunch of ways you can go about seeking therapy. I think it's the research aspect and like knowing what resources are out there before you just give up. I mean, sometimes it's gonna take work, but just think about like, is it going to take work for me to find a counselor, or would I rather just like be in my body and like not feel great all the time?
Yeah.
And I mean, things are just had a counselor and you're matched correctly. Typically, you have a counselor for life unless I retire or something like that. But if you find somebody you build a relationship with, I moved from doing a private practice in Keller to my own private practice, and there was some people that when I moved them over, I didn't accept their insurance, or things changed, or maybe I was charging more, and I work with those people. I usually don't just throw people to the side. Even with COVID, someone's like, oh, I lost my job, and I'm like, okay, I got you. How much can you afford?
Mm-hmm.
And I can't do that with everybody, but when I can, I definitely do. And typically, if you can find someone to work with you, I mean, I think you would be good. And there's so many websites out there. If you just type in, I mean, they got therapy for Black girls, which is you have to pay for it, but it will match you with a Black therapist. It's only Black therapists on there, so.
That's a huge thing. I feel like a lot of people want to
Mhm.
see people that look like them because there's some things you don't
Yes.
want to have to explain. It's like,
Yes.
so I think
Yes.
I'm glad that there's more people of color going to be the
Yeah.
professionals in that field because we need all of y'all.
Yes. Or even like a lot of people don't realize they have EAPs. You have an employer, your insurance is super high, your copay is going to be high. But typically every company has an EAP and they're required to give you like 5 to 10 sessions that are free, no insurance needed, just employee assistance program. So always look into that too. And if
Okay,
you have
that's good.
Medicaid or any low grade of insurance, typically you'll be able to find a counselor as well.
That's good. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, because a lot of
Yeah.
people do have Medicaid, even for kids. A lot of times, like parents, especially elementary school, because them kids be needing therapy. They don't think that they're going to be able to afford getting their kids therapy. But typically, if you have Medicaid and kids are required to have insurance, they have any insurance. Typically, you should be able to find a counselor that takes your insurance, or your insurance company is actually supposed to find you a counselor as well.
Yeah. That's
So
great information. Let me ask you this. For the people who work, I work with students obviously. So the
yeah.
people who work with students or anyone, what are some things that you could tell them to look out for when it comes to depression and different things of that sort?
Yeah, I think anytime you notice someone is kind of not acting themselves, especially with teens, with their suicide rates being at like a all-time high, I think one of the things is like when teens talk about suicide, it's not taken seriously a lot because it's happening so often. But I think anytime someone says they are thinking about harming themselves, like you always take it serious. Like
Mm-hmm.
always try to find that person some help because I know a lot of teens, and what happens is their friend tells them they're thinking about killing themselves. And they're like, I don't want my friend to be mad. And it's like, girl, you want your friend to be alive or you want her to be mad? You need to tell an
Exactly.
adult that she's thinking about doing some things like that.
Yeah.
Anytime there's like a lot of like personality changes, like if your teen typically comes home and talks to you often, and then for the last month they're not talking to you, that's not normal teen behavior. They're just being a teenager. No, that's not normal. If that just a rapid change like that, like you need to be aware of it. They won't talk to me. Okay, if they won't talk to you, find someone they will talk to. And then also figure out, a lot of the times with these kids, it's a lot of times the parents. I'm like, I don't need to see you. I need to see your mama and your daddy and your grandma because they
That's
are
it.
all impacting your mental health, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why when something happens, we always try to figure out, well, what's going on at home? And they're like, everything's good. It's like, no, everything is not good. You know, kids are aware of everything that goes on in the home. And so you just have to have a clear eye of like, you know, being more involved in your children's lives. And I think that's still something that has to be worked on a daily. You know, people think like providing financially, giving them what they want is great. But if you don't have that bond with your child, I think that's where you lose them sometimes, you know, because they're going to get the wrong advice. Like, I'm always talking to kids about sex, you know, and it's like their parents are so taboo about the subject that they get terrible information rather than like make an open dialogue start when they're little that sex, even though you might not want them to have it, you can't just not talk about it.
Exactly.
Like, that doesn't make any sense. They need to have information about it.
You definitely need to talk to them about that because they know, y'all.
Yeah.
They know.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, anytime they start having bad grades and they have a shift, if they're trying a bunch of risky behaviors, things like that, like, or, you know, being aggressive, like pushing their little sister down the stairs, and then, I mean, sexual abuse, that's always something that's really important, especially in the Black community. I mean, like 1 out of 3 girls have been sexually molested, you know, 1 out of 5 boys. And that's still something that, you know, working for CPS that I've seen where parents do not talk about those things. And it takes somebody turning like 35 and having a mental breakdown to be like, I was molested by my stepdaddy or something like that. Like, those things can't be taboo. And like, we can't keep having these family secrets of like, well, it happened to me too. And it's like, how come you didn't tell me about that growing up, that like someone could actually touch me, and like what should I do if someone does touch me? Like the same thing goes for boys, and I think there's probably a lot more boys that are molested, however they're not reporting it as much as girls are.
Yeah, it's true.
And so things like that. So anytime personality changes, grades, not eating, I mean, just being aware of those things. If it just doesn't seem normal, you know, sometimes it could be teen behavior, but a lot of times, even so, still try to figure out why, you know, why they're acting that way.
Yeah, that's good information. It's always a shift.
Yes, there is. There definitely is. And I mean, I think the whole thing is to, you know, don't try to buy your children's love. Like, I think, especially when I was in Keller, you know, these kids would get everything they wanted. However, it was like the missing puzzle piece, parents, was that you guys work too much, you don't spend quality time with your kids, and then also, especially with Black parents, it's terrible to discipline your kids if you don't have the relationship bond with them. You know, just coming out of nowhere and trying to discipline your kids but not having the bond with them, like, that's a big thing. Typically, if you want to discipline your kids in the right way, you have a good relational bond with them. You can't just be disciplining them if you don't spend any quality time with them. Quality time is like a main factor with parents.
Yeah, the kid definitely wants you. So
Yes.
they want to know who you are.
And if they don't want you, it still is another question to like figure out, like, why doesn't your child like your boyfriend? It's not just because the boyfriend's there. Like, is it because you're paying all this attention to the boyfriend? Like, you know, there's always a bunch of different answers, but you have to be curious enough to want to know. They want me to fix kids, and I'm like, I ain't fixing your child. They're like, she's still acting the same way, and I'm like, you're right, because you're still acting the same way, ma'am.
Exactly. But let me ask you this: do you feel like you have to be a little bit more aggressive when you're when you're helping a client when it comes to a parent? Because I would imagine that you have to be a little bit more aggressive with the parents if they are the problem.
You know, I think it depends. I think it's unique based on who they are. Because some clients, you know, when they come in and they're usually at the last straw, they'll listen to me and they'll be open. And typically what I'll usually do is do individual sessions. If the parent is an issue, I'll bring them in and we'll do some family sessions. That usually like gets the flow going. But if they don't have a good understanding of it, sometimes it is like me saying like, look, like his homework isn't good because of you doing such and such. These are some things you could work on. However, when some people don't believe in counseling, that's when you have to be like a little bit more aggressive and be more just clear. It's not even aggressive. It's like me just being very clear with them. And if they don't want me to be their counselor because I'm being honest, then, you know, find someone else. Like, I'm not going to change, my dynamics based on how you feel. I'm telling you what I've observed. It's not a lie. And if we are in the same room and your child is on the same side as me, it's like you have to really look at yourself. And that's all to it. And I mean, they may not be ready. And sometimes it's terrible, but they wait for something bad to happen until they're ready to take that mirror and look at themselves.
Yeah. They definitely don't want to look at
Yeah.
themselves, especially if they're the
Yeah, well,
problem.
Johnny stole my car. Well, now that Johnny's affecting you, you're ready to make some changes. Like,
He stole
because
my
a lot
car.
of it, especially with the with teens, sometimes they're rewarded for a lot of their bad behaviors. And I'm always like, so he didn't do his homework and you still let him play all his video games and talk to all his friends and no consequences. And so even though he's not listening to you, like, what did you do to make him listen by not having any consequences? Like, parent training is real.
That's a whole niche.
Yes, definitely. I'll tell you, and Kelly, I'll be like, woo! I'll be like, let me get my belt out. Lord Jesus.
Let me call my parents down here.
Yes. Yes.
That's
Girl,
too funny.
sometimes I'd be in a session, the way they would talk to their parents, I'd be like, woo, woo, woo.
Did I get away with my face?
Yeah. I'm like, you just let him talk to you like that? What the heck?
In front of company too.
Right.
Sometimes it just comes down to home training.
It does. It does. Like, who's running the household? You or the child? And a lot of times the child's running the household.
It's true. Especially as soon as they're born, they running it from the jump.
Yeah, and you know what I noticed a lot of times with Black clients is they raise their kids based on how they were raised, and trying to get into, like, kids are different. Like, what worked for you in a lot of the physical discipline is not going to be the same thing that works for a child in this day and age. They have so many different things. Their gender identities, they're fluid at age 7, and there's so many different things that are completely different. Electronics, the way school is done, like, there's no way you could take what your mom did and think you're going to be able to raise your child the same way. Like, you have to be open to, like, change the way you approach things, It's not going to be exactly the same. Because, I mean, the way that I was raised, and I got spanked in front of the teachers a lot of times, CPS would have been called,
Yeah, it's true.
It would have been recorded. It could have gone viral, and my mom probably would have had a CPS case. Yeah, and so it's like you can't go about things the same way anymore. It wouldn't make sense.
No, and they get used to that, though. Physical punishment, they get used to that.
Yes.
You gotta be creative.
Definitely. Yeah. And I mean, when I was going in high school or middle school, I don't think we ever talked about suicide, nor did I ever know anyone that committed suicide. And it's like these kids, at least once a year, are either losing someone to suicide or they got to have an assembly because someone's tried to kill themselves. Like, that's completely different.
It's so different now. It's so different.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Well, I want to ask you some happy questions.
Yeah.
If you could basically create our world, and like, what does a good world look like to Bree? What does a stable world look like for Bree?
I be living in La La Land sometimes, but for me, I would love to just, see more people have healthy relationships. I always think a healthy, intimate relationship is the goal, and I always think kids do better when their parents are better, either together, co-parenting. Like, that's always something I would love to see. And, like, I would love, we're going on a mission of, like, Black love. But I always think, like, with Black men, especially in Texas, with a lot of them being in jail, of just, like, what a child's life would look like if they had mom and dad and they were both super involved. Like, how big is that impact? And it's, like, it's huge. Mm-hmm. It could, like, change a lot for people. And so, people actually caring. Obviously, it'd be great if, we were all treated equally and we didn't have to keep having these same discussions with police brutality and racial injustice and, people not having insurance and that's why they're not getting help. Like, that would be amazing. I wish that everyone had the same access to healthcare and mental health that we all should have. Like, that would make a big difference as well. And then obviously, you know, for everybody just have a good amount of money in their pockets, you know.
Everybody needs that coin. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I mean, I think, you know, just like in our communities, like, you know, our own special communities, like, you know, me living in Fort Worth, to actually be able to engage with my community leaders, and like, if we talk about something, them actually hearing it and like it actually making a difference. Like, everything's so political right now that it just doesn't seem like people care as much. Like, there's not a lot of empathy nowadays, and I think that's changed, especially over the last year. Like, people just care and understanding what someone's going through before they make a lot of judgment.
Yeah, that's real.
One
Well,
day.
yeah, one day it might be that might be in heaven when we get that,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah,
okay.
yeah.
We can still dream and hope, hope for the
Yes,
best.
but my mission to have more love in Black families, I think that will definitely be something that I strategize, hopefully.
Yeah, I think it's starting already. So having you
Yeah,
spearhead your sector will be great, because I mean it's another
yes,
person working towards the goal. So that's all that matters. So
yeah,
so
yes.
how do you define happiness?
I don't know. I don't know if it's like a feeling. I would say sometimes it's a feeling. But I think it's a more of like a self being for me. Like, I can tell the difference, especially like physically, when I'm happy, because you know there could still be like, even now there's so many things I could worry about and could say like this is the worst of the worst. But depending on where I'm at with my self care, my spirituality, my meditation, like, that's happiness for me, where I don't like let these bad things affect me as much. Like, I'm just like working through them.
Hmm.
And then, you know, just like when I'm feeling fulfilled, it's always a good thing. Like, you know, I'm actually in the career. Private practice was one of the things I had on my list for like a couple years down the line. And that's one of the things the pandemic brought up, of like, I realized I can't work for these people that are going to tell me what I can and can't do with seeing, because really it came down to, I wanted to see Black clients for free, and they told me no at this private practice, and I was not happy.
Hmm.
And so, I mean, things like that, I just think like, depending on where I'm at and I'm actually being consistent on like caring about me, usually that affects my happiness the most. And I've only noticed that probably in the last 2 years or so. But you know, happiness is definitely not like material things for me. It's like just a sense of like well-being.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to hear that. That's great, because a
Yes.
lot of materialism going on out here.
Yes, you know, if money could take care of everything, you know, that would be great, but that's typically, it's not it. Money
You
does not fix a lot, especially don't fix you, you
It
know.
sure don't. You can run out of money.
Okay?
Run out of money.
Yes. But you
So
can't run out of self-love.
you cannot. That's so true. Now,
Yeah,
you are married to my brother, and
I am.
I want to know how has his presence helped you in this realm right now, like in this phase of
Yeah,
life.
I mean, he definitely, when I was even thinking about doing the private practice, he's like one of the people that pushes me, because I am a very logical, like, realist thinker, and so I always think I have to have so many things lined up before I do something, and like seeing him just be like, I'm just gonna do it, like with the stuff he's working on, it really like it helps me be like, okay, like it's gonna be okay, because I can overthink something, and like I don't typically be like I'm gonna go out off of my dreams. I'm gonna create things, and with him, he's like super encouraging. If I have an idea, he thinks about like, okay, how can you put it together? That's such a good idea. Like, he's super supportive in that way. He just opened my eyes to see, like, you know, I could probably dream a lot bigger, and I don't have to think about everything in the most logical stance. Like, it's probably good to have a dream, because girl, me will be like, I'm just gonna work for somebody and make this amount of money, you know, and that's just the way, like, that sounds like a good amount, but you know, I really realized, you know, being with him, of like, you know, like I could be a lot bigger than what I think. And it's gonna take me being like not scared to possibly fail, which I still don't like that.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's okay.
but
Look,
rejection's a part of like the journey itself, and I'm gonna have to try things, and some of them might not work, and you know, he's gonna be there for me regardless if it fails or not, and he's not gonna like think any differently. Like he thinks I'm great at everything. I don't know why, but he does. He's super
Good.
supportive.
That's because he loves you.
Girl, he better shoot.
She said
Does he have a choice?
He
Right.
better. You're right. He better. Because if you don't,
He
I'll say
better.
something. We're not
Yes.
starting over. She is.
No.
This is
Shoot.
it. This is it.
Exactly.
My last question is: if you knew then what you know now, would you change anything?
I don't think I would change anything. I think like, you know, the way that I've kind of started thinking, and this is the whole part of like therapy of like, you know, not really thinking of like what could have changed, but like what's the positive sense of thinking of like growth wise. Like if I hadn't worked at that private practice and had the experience, I probably wouldn't know what I'm doing now.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I'm glad I'm not glad some of the events took place to get me where I'm at. But I feel like they were all part of growth because, you know, I don't know if I told you, but like I was not doing great in high school. Grade wise, like I was out in the streets a little bit. But I wasn't doing like great, but you know, I always think of like, I always thought to myself, like, I wish I would have like stuck to my schoolwork in high school because I probably had more scholarships and wouldn't be in debt, you know, paying for school myself. And that's always one thing I look back on. I'm like, I would have just took high school better. I would have gotten more scholarships and I wouldn't be in this debt. However, like I needed those experiences to like be where I'm at now. I do wish that the student loans would go away. Like if they get lost in the system or just lost in the system or something like that. But you know, those are all things that I've learned from, and you know, they probably are not going to get paid in this lifetime. Yeah, y'all are going to get this minimum payment, and that's just what it's going to be.
You can take that right on out. Just get out.
Yes. So I try to think of everything, and you know, it doesn't happen right in the moment, but I think afterwards and after like I've evolved from it, then I'm just like, dang, that was like, if that wouldn't have happened, even like with Ben, if we get in an argument or anything like that, you know, at the time, like it just seems like the worst of the worst. But then I can go back to it and I could be like, dang, that was such a good thing that we talked about that and we got that off our chest. Like that's like a positive thing. Like even though it doesn't feel like it, usually a lot of times it's all just growth.
That's the message right there, y'all. You can have horrible events happen, but there's always a lesson in that event. Always.
Yes. And you can't always think that just because of one experience or two experiences with something being horrible, you can't keep it in your mind that something's always gonna, you get so many no's and you can't be like, well, that happened to me already, so I'm just gonna have this bad experience and think it's always gonna be like that. That's like what stops a lot of us from actually progressing, of having one bad experience and our minds can't get past that thought of seeing what it's gonna actually be. Because we don't know the future.
That's true. So true. Well, I'm so proud. I'm so proud of you, and I'm glad that you started your own business. You know, I love ownership, so I'm very proud of you. And I know it's gonna be great.
Yes, it's gonna be big.
Yeah.
Yes, girl, I'm gonna have locations and hire people. And you know, I mean, I could do that now, but I'm like, I want to wait till we start a family before like I do anything too busy and keep my benefits with the state first. I should always, because they got good benefits. They do.
Yeah. Everything is good timing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But yeah, I appreciate it. I really enjoyed myself. Thanks for asking me to come out. Well, not come out, but you know.
This is the new coming out right here. Thank you for coming on, Bree. I'm gonna stop. Okay.